Well, friends, it seems the Winnipeg Jets are preparing to clear house and restart over, really. Maybe with the same front office staff, but certainly not with the same coaching staff. We're going to explore the implications of this. And then to close this out, we're going to be talking about the upcoming NHL Playoff Series and why you might actually want to care on this one. There are some interesting rooting options for the Jets, and maybe even one or two involving a little bit of a cheeky prospect pick. So be sure to stay tuned. All coming up on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of the Locked On Winnipeg Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HOLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thank you for choosing to make Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, including Apple, Spotify, Google, Megaphone, Odyssey, and as you can see from this footage, YouTube. We're available on all your favorite platforms, so give us a follow right now. It's free, and we really love and appreciate your support. Now, for tonight's episode, I thought it would be cool to dive into a couple of topics. The biggest one right now is obviously the current state of the Jets, which is ever evolving and changing. We'll start off with that, and then I want to talk about some of the NHL playoff matchups because obviously they start, by the time you're hearing this, they actually started yesterday with I believe it's around 4 or 5 games. A very interesting first round that's going to be coming up pretty soon here. So, I think there's a lot of interest in this run for a couple of teams because we have some of the strongest squads we've seen all really in a big, I guess, battle for the championship run all at once. I mean, usually we have like one or two clear front runners, but this year we have a really crowded field. So we'll dive into that later in the show. But first off, let's talk about the Jets. Yesterday, you probably heard that a lot was happening with the players post game, right? The Kraken game was the end of the season, and so we were getting kind of like post game interviews, postseason interviews, very brief responses for the most part. But there were some players who kind of gave very detailed answers, and you could kind of tell that there was a lot of tension. Paul Stastny's response, Mark Scheifele's answer about his future with the team, Paul Stastny's thoughts on the lack of a clear tactical approach. It was pretty spicy if we're being honest. I mean, this was stuff that clearly pointed towards a locker room divide, but I think more importantly, Mark Shipman had said there weren't dramatic changes being planned, right? So that statement, I think, for a lot of us was annoying. And then to have hours later players from the team basically say, no, hold the phone. We don't really, we don't feel that this is the right direction. That's got to be a bit embarrassing. I think Shipman is very keenly aware, now more than ever, that the status quo isn't really going to cut it. And I think he was trying to downplay it publicly, but let's be real. I think we all know the status quo hasn't gotten it done with this team in years. And for the Jets to kind of get back to where they were, a lot will have to change. And so we're actually getting the first of these changes. Frank Zaravalli is reporting from, I don't know what source he's had, but it sounds like the Jets are basically getting rid of a lot of the coaching staff. Dave Lowry is not going to be remaining the head coach. Jamie Compon and Charlie Huddy are not returning. And the only one who actually is getting a contract extension is Wade Flaherty. What is interesting, though, is that somebody pointed out that they're not really firing these guys so much as they're just sort of letting them remain free agents. I think the big thing is the Jets are not super worried about maybe other teams trying to hire from Winnipeg staff. And so in an emergency pinch, they can bring back some of these guys if they can't really find suitable replacements. But I think if anyone from this staff ends up returning, other than Flaherty, I think it's kind of a disaster. At that point, you would basically be admitting that Your coaching search went awry really quickly. You couldn't get a competent replacement, and the Jets are going to be going back to the same old, same old. I think if that occurs, a lot of the players are basically going to just kind of sit it out. I think that there's a lot of guys who are going to be super professional about it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if some players, they're kind of fed up and they want to sit out. I don't know that I can even blame them necessarily. I do think that there is accountability that needs to be, made a central point amongst the players in the locker room. But, by the same token, where's the accountability for the team and the organization? I feel like the team has been allowed to be a bit substandard over the years. And if the players want to kind of take some charge and also take ownership of the situation, I don't know that I necessarily disagree with all of that. I think that there are some things that you should be considered for criticizing, right? Shifley's defensive efforts, I think, are definitely an issue with him. We've also seen Wheeler maybe ask for a few too many minutes on the top line, but if guys are intimating that they're frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that they are wasting prime years of their careers, I actually do agree with that. I think that there is valid validity in that criticism. I think it's very valid, and I think it's important for the players to speak up when they feel that the organization is not trending in the right direction. Because as an outside observer, we all see the same thing. I mean, it's not like this is just something that's shocking to people. Most people who have been watching this team very closely have started to turn on the idea that the Jets can continue on their present course. If anything, I think we all know the Jets are going to have to make some very serious changes. Now, my fear is that if they make all of these coaching staff changes, who are they going to replace them with? That is a very big question. If they go to guys like Randy Carlyle, I'm not really in love with that. Um, Pascal Vincent, I think, would be an interesting option. The Jets have kind of kept him, I think, in their back pocket as a potential coaching option. Mark Morrison with the Manitoba Moose is getting phenomenal results right now. I wouldn't mind him getting a look to see if he can translate the success that he's having at the AHL level up to the big club. Obviously, the AHL is a very different game, but Sheldon Keefe came up through the Marley system and ended up becoming a very successful coach for the Maple Leafs. So, if the Jets want to give it a shot, I'm down for it. I mean, there's not really many free agent candidates that I'm really into right now, or that I'm even aware of that would be like qualified fits. So, if the Jets want to give either Vincent or Morrison a shot, I'd say why not? Let them pick their staffs, see if they can find some really good assistants, and hopefully get this team back on the track towards being a really good contender in the near future. I think the pieces are there to get this team into an interesting spot. Mark Scheifele apparently has not submitted his trade request, so he might even be an option if the Jets can sell him on the vision. But it's really important that the Jets hire correctly, because the next few phases of this team are going to be critical to determining the future of the Jets and what happens with this core going forward. Now, that is the primary updates right now. Obviously, as things change, we'll continue to discuss the situation. Winnipeg is going to be scouting, I'm sure, and looking for new staff. But until we hear more about that, this is kind of where it's going to be left. Again, throughout the season, I'm sure we'll have thoughts on this, especially during the playoffs, because the Jets are going to be very active, I'm sure. And hopefully they give us some really interesting things to talk about and get excited about. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of us are waiting for something for next season to really draw us in. This might be the first sign that some positive changes might be on the way. Now, I do also want to talk tonight about the playoffs. Speaking of the postseason, this is a very exciting time for a lot of you. For Jets fans, maybe not so much. It's been a bit rough. But before we preview these postseason runs and what we can expect from it, I did want to talk about a really cool group that I think you should hear about. This is Athletic Greens. Now, I've mentioned them before, but if you don't know and you're not familiar, Athletic Greens offers this really cool product that I've actually gotten to try. It's called AG1, and it's actually really good. It's very tasty for what it is. It's a daily supplement that gives you so many great vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, around 75 of them. Now, if you're wondering what is any of this for, well, it can help promote gut health, give you some energy, optimize your immune system, And if you're really against taking pills or, multivitamin tablets that are just kind of nasty, right? AG1 is the perfect option for a one-a-day supplement that gives you all of the same benefits with some extra bonuses. I really can't recommend it enough. It's very easy. You just stir it into some water, it goes down like a charm, and it actually tastes pretty darn good. It's suitable for almost every lifestyle, whether you're into keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or even gluten free. And, it's actually great for you, as, less than 1 gram of sugar, no real carbs to speak of. This is great stuff, and it's all natural. There's no nasty chemicals, no artificial stuff. You really can't go wrong. If you don't believe me, Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews, and it's trusted by professional athletes as well as many leading medical experts. So, again, to get started, it really couldn't be easier. We actually have a special offer right now. It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We are continuing our thoughts on the upcoming NHL playoffs. Of course, we just talked about some really big changes with the Jets. Obviously, a very exciting or nerve-wracking time, depending on which side of the fence you sit. I would say it's probably both for me. There's excitement at the prospect of change, but maybe a few nerves as to what kind of change is coming. Now, there are some, I guess, more present-day issues going on with the NHL. Those issues being the NHL playoffs, which I don't know how much of them I'm going to watch. I'll probably try and catch the Western Conference stuff and maybe even some rooting interests for the Eastern Conference. But before we talk about what matches might be really interesting to watch, just wanted to say again, thank you so much for choosing to make Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. While you're at it, I highly recommend that you also check out Locked On Now. It's a really cool daily program that gives you game recaps, instant trade, and news analysis from our cast of local experts from across the network in very digestible, bite-sized pieces, again, delivered to you daily. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, so give a Locked On Now a like, follow, and subscription on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. It's free, and they really love and appreciate your support. Now, speaking of daily stuff and the upcoming NHL playoff schedule, we are actually kicking off round one. It started technically, again, like I said at the start of the episode, yesterday, if you're listening to this Tuesday morning, and we have a couple of interesting series. Now, only a few of these are going to be really relevant for the Jets because, Winnipeg's business, for the most part, involved, I would say, the Rangers. That was one of the bigger trade partners this year. The Rangers are actually going to be playing on Tuesday against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is going to be this evening. That's a game that I actually plan on watching. I forget the exact conditions for the first rounder, but I think the Rangers' second round pick becomes a first rounder or something if New York ends up going to, I want to say the conference finals. I forget exactly what the circumstances are. I'll have to look it up again. But this is obviously Winnipeg's clearest rooting option here. The Rangers giving the Jets a nice top round pick would be very ideal. Already, the Rangers paid a pretty hefty price for Kopp, but let's be honest, he's been more than worth it. So I think the Jets would be a little bit frustrated with the fact that, he didn't get utilized properly. And, he's showing off this amazing skill and perfect complementary offensive skill in the Rangers' top six, while the Jets got good value, but not really anywhere near what he's showing off there. So if that lower round pick can get converted to a first, I think that would be ideal. As far as the other playoff series go, out of the East, we have a couple of interesting ones. So you've got Boston and Carolina, which this is, I feel, a fairly one-sided series. I would expect the Canes to win in 5 or 6 games, but Boston has this innate ability to survive a lot of its own mistakes. I don't know if it's going to be able to do that this time. The cast of supporting characters is a lot older than in previous seasons, so we'll see. Carolina is, of course, a very fast, very skilled team, quietly one of the top contenders out there, and a very tough squad. But are they going to be running into some first round hiccups against the Bruins? I can't imagine. But if there is an early round upset, that'd be pretty crazy because I think the Canes are one of the few teams that compares favorably when you look at some of the top of the division and top of the conference, like the Florida Panthers. Now, we've also got Tampa Bay versus Toronto, and I think this one is a series that a lot of people are keeping an eye on because Toronto has always been one of those teams that's choked every year. And when it comes to the first round, especially, they have collapsed in some unbelievably hilarious ways. This team, I don't know what they're feeling. I don't know if they are expecting disappointment or if they're ready to finally surmount that hurdle that has seemingly blocked them from greatness. On paper, they've got everything. The only thing that I think they might have an issue with is the goaltending if they can't get a few extra saves. But in terms of outscoring their opponents and trying to really run up the goal tallies, I think they have that ability. And Tampa Bay is not as good as it used to be, so this could be a really energetic series and a very high scoring series. I don't know who I would pick here. I would probably say, for some reason, Tampa Bay just seems like they're going to go through. I don't know why I trust them, even though they are worse off than they were in previous years, and Toronto is probably the strongest it's ever been. I don't know. It's really hard to bet against the Lightning. They always seem to find that extra level of skill and edge when it comes to the postseason. Now, of course, there are plenty of other playoff series, especially in the West, and we'll talk about all of these in just a little bit. But before we go any further, did want to shout out the wonderful folks at betonline.net, especially for those of you who are really into, say, online betting during the postseason. BetOnline.net should be your number one choice for all of your betting stats and sports info. They've got all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including basketball playoffs, the start of the MLB season, and most importantly for all of you, these crazy first-round matchups in the NHL. This is like one of the best times to be an online bettor is when the playoffs hit. Now, they're going to be your continued source for all of your sport wagering information from live betting, playoff odds, esports, and more. Again, when it comes to postseason hockey and betting, BetOnline.net really is your number one source. They've got all the articles and stats updates that you need, so you'll always stay abreast of the latest trends in the postseason series, and they make it easier than ever to cast a bet. I've done it myself with German soccer. It was super easy, even for a total noob like me who has never done online betting until this point. Very simple, very straightforward, and very user-friendly. So you really can't go wrong. To get started, go to betonline.net on your laptop or mobile device to check out the latest trends in action and get started with a free account. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Hello, friends, and welcome back to these closing thoughts on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We are talking about some of the opening salvo of round one of the NHL Playoff Series. We've talked about a couple of Eastern Conference matchups that I think you might want to keep an eye on. In terms of the West, we're not going to cover every single series tonight, but in terms of the West, I would probably say Nashville, Colorado, and St. Louis and Minnesota might be two of the really interesting ones. Now, Nashville, Colorado has some interesting storylines because the Preds made the playoffs on the back of their goaltender, and then Juuse suddenly got injured right in the last game of the season or so, and now he's going to be out, I think, for the entire playoffs, which against Colorado is kind of a disaster. I don't know that you could ask for worse circumstances if you're the Preds. This makes a pretty lopsided first round series look even starker, which would make it amazing if the Preds somehow upset the expectations and survive against Colorado. I don't expect it to happen. I think the Preds are definitely in as tough as any team in this entire postseason picture. But again, the postseason is a strange time. You only have to win 4 games per series. And if the Preds can find a way to survive this incredible offense, all bets are off at that point. If the Avs get eliminated, I don't know that there are many teams out west that I would say are truly at the level of Colorado and Florida and Tampa Bay. So, yeah, a very interesting series. I don't know who I'm rooting for. I would probably want the Avs to succeed. I think the way that they have built their team is something that I support, and I would rather see them be successful, also to show the Jets how they should be doing it too. But as far as other Central Division matchups are concerned, St. Louis versus Minnesota, which is going to be one of the first Western series we get to see, I'm hyped for this one. This is probably one of the few series that I have a lot of anticipation for. Obviously, the first game has already happened. I don't yet know the scoreline because I'm recording this episode before it happens. But on tomorrow's episode, I'm sure I'll have some thoughts and give you some insight into what has emerged in what could be one of the most intense, most physical, and most closely matched series of the entire playoffs. This one, from the games that they've played already, I think almost all of them were decided by one goal. St. Louis, I'm pretty sure, has the season series edge, but Minnesota is a tough team. And this series, you've got two heavyweights in the division that are ready to slug it out. The Wild are really looking forward to exercising some of these playoff demons. They've had trouble advancing. A couple of years ago, that they matched against the Jets in the first round, and that did not go well. So, yeah, I think if you're a Jets fan, you might be pulling for the Wild here. Everyone hates the Blues universally, so yeah, screw the Blues, I guess. Let's go Wild. They're the neighbors across the border. The Jets have a long, very intense rivalry with this team, but I guess if you're going to pick one and you're going to choose like a Central Division rival to root for, the Wild are a pretty cool option. The last series that I'll talk about that I think is one that I'm not really sure is would I call it lopsided? I don't know. This is Dallas versus Calgary. This series for me on paper should be lopsided, but the Stars have this strange knack for surviving a lot of their own mistakes. Kind of like the Bruins, another team that is a little bit on the older side, maybe relies on contributions from depth players who wouldn't traditionally be on a lot of high-end contenders. They've got some great players, no doubt. I think you've seen random guys like Kivi Ranta show up during really critical games. John Klingberg, they're still trying to get some mileage out of. Jamie Benn, of course, Tyler Seguin. But I just feel like the Stars at some point are going to run out of steam. Rope Hintz can only carry so much of this offense. Same for some of their other really talented goal scorers. But Calgary is one of those sleeper cup picks. I think that this team is built from the ground up to be a true playoff contender. They are defensively resolute. They get great goaltending. I've talked about them having a really balanced lineup. Again, I think if one team can really run the tables and shut down some of the really high-octane offenses like Colorado and Florida, it is this Calgary team. Their offense is also pretty underrated. I think, again, despite being one of the most defensively stingy teams out there, they do enough on the other side of the puck to actually be pretty effective. This is a great team. I think, they have a more legitimate shot at a cup win than I think people have given them credit for. Everyone's kind of dazzled by how many goals the Panthers tend to score, but this Calgary team, they're going to snuff you out, and it's going to be an absolute dogfight to beat them. So if they can make it through the conference rounds and get into the finals, don't be shocked if they end up winning everything. I don't think that they are going to necessarily. I still think the road to success is very narrow, and it's going to be brutal. But the Flames, maybe if they turn up the heat at the right time, they find that streak that can really carry them through. This is a team to keep an eye on. I'm very interested to see how they do, and their first test is going to be Dallas on Tuesday. So we'll see how they handle it. I expect them to take care of business, but if they stumble, that'd be disappointing. Let's just hope that, my favorite player on their team, Oliver Shillington, really gets a chance to show off what he can do and show why guys who play his style of defense really are going to push the game forward again. But so far, I think those are the main series that I'm interested in tracking. I'd be curious to know what playoff rounds you're interested in. What games are you going to be paying close attention to? Be sure to let me know at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets on Twitter. Tomorrow's episode, I'll have some thoughts on some of these early round games as much as I'm able to watch, and I'll give you any additional Jets updates. But for tonight's episode, that is going to be all the time that we have. I thank you so much for choosing to make Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. Be sure to also make your second listen Locked On NHL. From first-round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no one else. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts, so be sure to like, follow, and subscribe right now. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great night, and go Jets go.